Jack, I remember when I walked into my first QBR as a solutions engineer. It was a boardroom, and we had a presentation up on the screen. Our head of revenue was there. My 4 AEs were there, and I was there. And I found myself asking, what am I doing here?
Why am I here?
The questions were things like, when are we projecting this to close? What are we doing here? What's our next step? Have you called this person? Have you talked to that person? And then something happened. 1 or 2 times for each deal, there were a question come up around what has the prospect said about the product. And I felt like I did have a lot to say, but I don't know if I knew exactly how I should be showing up in that room. But thankfully, Karthik is here to help us out. And I think we had a great conversation about this and more today.
We absolutely did. And I feel like everyone has had that moment of going, whether it's QBR, forecasting, calls, or even just in that opportunity channel in Slack. What can I say? What should I say? Is this my opportunity to speak up? And you're right. We just got done with a conversation with Karthik where we explored that. I loved some of the perspectives and thoughts that he had brought up there. But before we get into that, hi, everyone. I'm Jack Cochran, General Manager of Presales Collective and host of the Presales podcast. With me is my fantastic co-host, Matthew James. Matthew, welcome.
Hey, everyone. So if you've ever been like me and asked those kinds of questions while you're in a QBR or, heaven forbid, weekly at a forecast meeting, I think you'll have a lot to learn from today's discussion.
Absolutely. If you don't know Karthik, Karthik is the manager of solutions engineering at Freshworks recently, where he has built, coached, and managed a distributed team of SEs across companies of all sizes from enterprise to commercial, has a wealth of background in the space and a lot to contribute. He is also a Presales Collective regional community leader in Chennai, India, which recently hosted over 60 SEs coming together to network and learn in April. So very, very recently. I've gotten to know him over the past few months of being in the role, and I'm very excited there was an opportunity to bring him in and just talk about pre-sales on the show today.
I wish I could have been there. 60 amazing pre-sales people. Jack, anything else to say?
I think that's about it. Karthik, thanks for joining me on the pre-sales podcast. Pleasure to have you here.
Likewise, Jack.
I'm very excited to have you here. I think we connected back close to when I started as GM, and we talked about quite a number of things. And so I'm very happy we could get you into the show specifically today. Something that I've actually been excited to talk about, but that we haven't yet on this show for some reason, at least since I've been here, is talking about getting pre-sales teams involved in those forecasting, QBRs, strategy sessions, and digging into not only why it's good, but what you're missing out on if you're not there in the room. But before we do that, Karthik, would love for you to just take a moment, tell us about yourself, tell us your background experiences, and what got you into the Presales Collective. How have you joined the community?
So I started out my career as a developer, and somewhere down the line, I felt that development was not something that I would be doing long term. And back then, I had a very high passion for sales, but Destiny had a different thing for me. So I came into pre-sales because of my technical background. I've never looked back since then. So that's my tryst with pre-sales, and I've been both an individual contributor and a people manager as well. That's my quick background. And with respect to Presales Collective, I've always felt that we needed some sort of community to probably bounce off ideas, talk to each other, learn from each other. And it was during COVID that all these things came together. We had a community set up on Slack. I heard about Presales Collective from a friend, and I joined this community, and it just kept growing. It's a fantastic community. You put any questions, any thoughts, and you will always have people to discuss about it, help you out, guide you. It's been a fantastic experience with Presales Collective. And probably that is also one of the reasons why I also want to give back to the community and to the profession as well. So that's been my journey with Presales Collective as well, and it's going to continue, which I'm sure.
Whenever I talk to people and they ask me, so why would people join this community? I'm like, well, how I hope people see it is that you join Presales Collective so that you get better in some way or another. Yes, there's like connecting with people, which is a great way to do it. There's events, there's shows and podcast episodes like this one. But really, you joined because you're like, hey, I'm doing this thing called pre-sales and I want to get better at it. And so I love that that's kind of your mentality. And also at the point of saying, hey, we want to start giving back as well. That's kind of what drew me into the community as well myself. So we share a very similar background there. Let's move in to talk a little bit about the topic of the day. So getting pre-sales into the room. Mm-hmm. From your perspective, what does it mean to be in the room? What does that look like?
For me, when I started my journey as a solutions engineer, which might be very similar to most of us here, was we were actually not in the room. When I say not in the room, it was about making those critical decisions in terms of deal strategy. How do we approach customer? And the expectation from us was to give demos, answer technical questions, make sure that customer has all their requirements met. So that's how it started out. But it would always feel like probably they are missing something when we are not there in the room. There are always information that we as solution engineers or pre-sales see that sometimes misses the notice of the sales people or the people that are working on the deal strategy. So that was something that I always felt. But luckily, what also happened for me was slowly we started going into a place where pre-sales started being in the room. So when I say being in the room, or when we say being in the room, it's about understanding what will make the organization win this deal and what are the gaps that we see, taking our inputs in and making sure that those are acted upon. We are treated as equal stakeholders. We also own and are accountable for the success of the opportunities and deals, or generally in terms of the success for the customers and the company.
So from an owning perspective, is that shifting the responsibility from others, people on the opportunity teams like account executives, or is that sort of like co-owning with them?
That's always the question, right? So it's always about co-owning, Jack, because what people feel is as pre-sales or solutions consultant, we actually don't own or we are not accountable for the deals, which is true to some extent, but which is also not true to the major extent. So what happens is we are accountable for the deals that come into our pipeline, the deals that we are working on. Of course, sales would always be the owners and the first and foremost owners for all the opportunities, but pre-sales always co-owns the opportunity with the salespeople. So we work as a team. We make sure that there is everything from a technical perspective or functional perspective that goes into the deal strategy, ensuring that the deal successfully closes for the organization. So it is co-owning. I know there are a lot of opinions around in terms of should SEs own the opportunities, what level of accountability should we take. So it's a highly opinionated topic, I would say, and we could just keep speaking about it for a long time.
I feel like it's kind of worth talking about that a little bit because where the opinions come from often matters, right? And the argument that I've always heard against this, to bring this up, is, well, the account executive has the most on the line for a deal closing or not closing, so they should 100% own the process, which I see a little bit on the one side of it. Yeah, there's a lot more for them to lose because if a rep doesn't get a deal in a quarter, they could be let go. I know there's very few SEs who have that level of risk on the line for deals closing or not closing. But I guess I personally have always felt, well, that as an account executive, co-owning isn't saying you're not going to have that responsibility, but more of get more of a team involved with helping you to do that. Is that how you viewed it as well?
To some extent, yes, Jack, because like you said, the responsibility lies on the reps side. So they own the targets, they own the numbers. I mean, it's literally their job on the line if all those targets or numbers don't go through. So that's one part of it, right? So the other part is there are also SEs who say, we also work and put in a lot of effort to close these deals. And we should also have the same level of acknowledgement and recognition and so on. But like you had rightly said, the reps are always responsible. I mean, it's their responsibility. They have probably 2 or 3 levels of higher responsibilities in terms of owning those opportunities or closing those opportunities. So pre-sales co-owns the opportunity, but probably we fly a little under the radar. And I think that's the nature of our job as well. But it's not to say that just because we are not reps and we don't take the target, doesn't mean that it's not our responsibility. We're not just there to probably just give our demos, presentations, do proof of concepts and go away. So when I say co-own and take responsibility, it's about ensuring that treating all those deals as our deals and making sure that we work and put in that work together to close that opportunity. I mean, I think that's been the way that I've also operated probably early in my career, to go into deals, give demos, and probably have a very detached way of working on opportunities. Probably, I think there's a shift that is happening right now, and I think that's the right shift as well.
I've definitely been in that role where you feel like my responsibilities, my bit on this is running demonstrations, answering technical questions, even sometimes you get more advanced, building technical champions with technical stakeholders. But it's been very segregated from the deal strategy side, which is how are we approaching this deal? What should we be showing them? Who else needs to be involved in the conversation? And how can we together work on attacking that? There's been very few times I've felt like I've been there, but I have noticed the difference in those deals when that co-ownership, as you said, has definitely been in there. How does this translate then to, let's say a deal seems like it might not be a good fit? I feel like that's the part that gets a little bit sticky, a little bit hairy. Opinions get made. There's a lot of tension there around the opportunity owner needing to get this deal across. Because often what will happen is an SC will often have a really good insight into the fact that this deal is way off the mark. Technically, what they want to do, we can't do, even if they buy, which means they're not going to be a happy customer. How do you start to navigate those conversations when, again, we don't have much on the line, but we certainly have an opinion about why this thing might not fit well?
Right. That's one of the trickiest part in terms of the forecast or working on opportunities. So what happens is you just talk to your sales representatives, right? So the best way to probably is to reason out with them. And let's be honest, there are times when we will also have to probably go the distance and take up that opportunity as well. So what usually happens is we try to make sure that the sales leaders, pre-sales leader, and the individual reps and pre-sales are involved in a discussion to probably brainstorm about how to go about this process. I know we have a problem, and probably we'll say if the opportunities of that deal outweighs the challenges that are posed by the pre-sales or by the salespeople. One way is to always put everybody in the room and discuss. But one of the things that very commonly happens is a lot of people just don't talk about it and let the deal happen, which results in a lot of resources and time being spent on something that shouldn't be. So if we are taking a judgment call on to take that up, then probably we can do that. No harm in it. But where do we take that judgment call, where we don't, is something that will happen only if we have a very open discussion.
Yeah, it's almost like you have to have already had that foundation set of the open conversation, been involved more, already working on it, where you're doing more than just the demo in order to have that conversation, right? You can't have that conversation if you're just in there doing a demo and then say, nah, this isn't the right fit.
Correct. So I think those foundations need to be laid out to have those healthy conversations, because your relationship with the rep, your credibility as an SC, everything forms the platform for having those open conversations. So I think building that platform before we actually have those conversations is very critical. And say, for example, if you are a new SE on the block, that's when you involve your manager. And how do we probably bring in other stakeholders to also probably weigh in their opinions and thoughts? Say, for example, you brought out saying that even if you onboard a customer, probably they might not be successful after they implement the solution. So in those cases, how do we leverage product team? How do we probably leverage the implementation team? How do we bring them into the discussion to take a more rational call is how we should be going about it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, it's not just the one opinion. It's certainly people who know that, hey, well, what it's going to take to get a customer up and going, how our product is intended to be used in that conversation as well. But that is adding a few more people that you need to now also get into the room. So I feel like we're just adding a little bit more complexity there even, right?
I wouldn't say it's a complexity as such, because say the first reason why you would be discussing if this opportunity should be taken up or not is because it could be a big logo or a high touch deal or a strategic deal. And whenever it is a high touch opportunity, there is going to be a deal team behind it. When I say deal team, there's going to be the product team, There's going to be the legal or security team. There are going to be multiple stakeholders. So it's not one function's decision to say, should we probably let this deal go or should we pursue it? Of course, sales would be in the fore about driving those conversations, but it is inevitable to have other stakeholders making a decision as well. Because if the customer is not going to be successful with our product, then it is not doing right by the company. And probably we might not bear the brunt of it, but probably the customer success and the support team might. So it is always good to consider or have a team as such in terms of making such decisions. That's the most logical thing to do as well.
I love that approach. That kind of takes a little bit of the pressure off of the SC, the solution engineer, who feels like often they're the bad guy in the conversation, right? That, oh my goodness, I feel like I have to be the person to say this deal is not going anywhere. That should never be a single person's job, right? Is what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah, correct. It's not a single person's job, but almost always I've seen that pre-sales have been the bearer of bad news in terms of technical qualifications. Because whenever I have spoken to my sales peers or the reps, they say, I know what you'll be saying, but hear me out first, because they know what approach that we usually follow. And a level, they also know what we are saying is right as well, but we always are the bearer of bad news in terms of deal qualifications.
It's an unfortunate, just known issue that you're going to feel like this tension between SEs pulling back, not wanting to do deals is the perception. But that's not what it is at all, right? And I feel like what you've been talking about around bringing others into the deal, actually having a more rounded conversation with product and your service and support teams might remove a little bit of that stigma, because then it's not the SE saying, no, we don't want to work this opportunity. It's more about, is this the right opportunity, which takes a little bit of that edge off.
It does. So what happens is, one, like I said, it's part of the job. Delivering such news or taking such calls is part of the pre-sales' job. The other problem is also that it's common that when too many stakeholders are involved, it might also delay the decision making and the deal cycle as well. So that is something that we should always be mindful of. But what I would also think is, as an SE, when you are communicating that, you always have that platform over which you are communicating it. So your credibility, whatever you've done in the organization, your success as an SE will also play on the minds of the AEs a lot. So say, for example, if you are one of the best SEs in the team and if you are delivering the news, then they would probably want to be more cautious. Because if this deal is not going to be a win for us, then the AE is also going to be held accountable for not closing that opportunity, because it's a big opportunity or it's a strategic opportunity, and it's going to impact the AE's reputation as well. So some of the AEs that I know also take into this, are cautious about this and are cognizant of this fact. So they tread cautiously whenever SEs talk about this.
I think this is a really interesting point that you bring up here, the AE's reputation. How long, Karthik, do you think does it take for an AE in your experience to kind of consider their reputation or what the organization is trying to do? Because I see that sometimes it takes some time to develop that trust with the SE and for the AE to understand what their brand is going to look like within an org.
So purely in terms of AE's reputation or the relationship with SE, I feel it starts out personally, Matt. So how comfortable is the AE and SE working together? And when I say the AE's reputation, it also depends on how successful have they been in meeting their targets, in bringing in big logos. Also, the level of good feedback that they have from the cross-functional teams as well. So that plays a very crucial part in the AE's reputation. In terms of SE, like I said, it all starts out personally. You will have to have that comfort, to an extent where you know what the AE is going to be saying, both in front of the customer or in your personal discussions, in your individual discussions, as well as the AE knows how you think and what you do as well. So it takes quite an amount of time to build that. Probably work on deals continuously together, or sometimes your reputation precedes you as well. Say, for example, if I am a new AE in the block, I get a new deal. And when I come into the organization, people say, hey, Matt is the SE to be on your deal. So if you say, hey, this deal doesn't look good to me, there are a lot of red flags, then probably I'm going to be listening to you. That comes with your experience and what you've done for the team and the organization. That's the reputation that I'm talking about.
From my experience, what I've seen, I'd love to get your thoughts on this as well. The way that you present those red flags can make a big difference. Because on one hand, you could be saying, this deal has a lot of red flags. Here's why we should stop. Versus saying, here's a lot of red flags. What's your approach, AE, as you're looking at this account to overcome these hurdles? When I have in the past presented sort of more of that, I've gotten more of that partnership and a little bit less of that pullback. How have you handled red flags? Is it similar to that? Has it been a little bit different? How do you handle that red flag conversation early on in a deal?
So what happens is we usually put it out or have a discussion with the AE, like I was saying. I mean, like you said, we are not going to be telling them that, hey, this deal isn't looking promising to me. We're not going to be winning it. But rather put it, hey, from our experience, we've seen these are the challenges that have made the probability of success much more lesser for us. And these are my suggestions to probably overcome this. It could be with respect to your technical capabilities. It could be with respect to your security or probably paperwork or processes that require for the success of the deal. You just put it out with your past experiences. That is how you put it. Because whenever you say this deal is not going to be coming in, I don't think anybody would like to hear that, at least upfront when we've just started working out on the deal. So probably calling out previous examples, experiences, and probably telling how to go about this is much better. And once you have a very common voice resonating from different functions, say, for example, if there's a technical fit problem that you foresee and you have product backing that as well, you have more voices that are backing a specific reasoning. And that builds up and also probably gives more credibility and value to whatever red flags or the cautions that you are outlining there.
I think you really hit the nail on the head. Once upon a time, when I was a young SE, we had a deal in front of us, and I basically went to the AE and I said, our product doesn't do this. And I left it there. That was not the productive approach for them or me. And it did lead to some more interesting and good conversations. This idea of bringing in the organization and bringing in past experience is so strong. So contrast that, I guess, to what you're saying of how can you bring your customer success partners, how can you bring your support teams into this up front? Do you have a good example of that? What does that look like for you?
There have been a lot of experiences or situations where we've brought in the customer success or probably the logos that we've closed as such. I mean, if customers are from similar industry or probably are playing on the same field, if they're competitors, it really helps us to bring in that experience. So it could be a customer who's part of a specific geography that follows a specific approach. What happens is we usually try to talk to customer success to see how exactly was this deal closed. One example that I can probably give you is if a customer is from Europe and if they are from the automotive industry, we try talking to the customer success team to see who closely resonates with this prospect and probably try talking to the people who worked on implementing the deal as well as closing the opportunity as well. So when we do that, we get a lot of experience in terms of how have they navigated or waded through a lot of challenges. Sometimes we find answers, sometimes we don't find answers, but it is always good to probably rely on that experience or from your existing logos, because it also opens up a path. Say, for example, there are a lot of challenges, and if this specific customer is ready to talk to your prospect, it's a win-win for you. A customer is talking for you on your behalf for a prospect, and it also increases the loyalty towards you as well. So all those avenues are always up there for you to leverage.
I'm getting more of a picture in my head. I mean, what's happening right now is I'm thinking back through my past and going, man, the times I wish I had taken this approach, because it's not normal too. I think we should call this out. Like, this takes a little bit of work to get some organizational buy-in, because how I think a lot of organizations are set up is you have the account executive owning the deal and then the SE supports. And we're only going to bring in product if we're deep into an architectural technical conversation and they need to hear from the product team about some specific feature, or there's something about implementation. We can borrow some time from the implementation team. But I haven't seen, or even myself, maybe been a part of a lot of organizations who view it as hey, selling is a whole company team sport. And the more that we can get the opinions of product and customer success and implementation and whoever else, the more successful that will be in not only understanding which deals are good, but how to close them better. Is this something that you've had to influence the setup, or what's your organization that is not okay with doing this? How would you maybe go about trying to convince people this is something we should consider doing?
You were right when you said it also depends on the maturity or the size of the organization, Jack. What happens is if you are probably a company that's early in their setup, probably it's just going to be the AE and SE or the solutions consultant, and they would also double up as the implementation person as well. But what I have seen is in terms of product, you are right, it could go either ways. They come in only when there are deep architectural questions or problems to solve. There are cases where we wouldn't have any control over there. We'll be honest, it's not all the times you would have your way or whatever you tell would go your way. So at those point of time, I don't think we can do much here. And that's the reality in a lot of organizations as well. So sometimes you work around it, sometimes you work in spite of it, but it gradually evolves is what I feel. Because the reason why I'm saying this is when I joined early in my career, it was fully sales led. So sales loops me in a demo. I go and give demos, 3-4 demos a day. And this level of maturity that we were talking about wasn't there back then. So as SEs, we didn't go on the opportunity. We did not have that seat on the table to tell that this deal is qualified or not. But eventually, as the organization sees success and it's going more upmarket and it's maturing, all these things tend to flow in organically. It's either from experience or it also comes from the organic growth as well. So one way or the other, organizations will tend to go towards it. But say, for example, if your working relationship with the AE and your credibility is really, really good, I've seen instances where an AE has different working styles with different SEs, even in the early part of the organization, right? So that is how an SE can influence. Say, for example, if Jack, you are an SE and I'm the AE, I might probably not listen to you when you say there are red flags in this opportunity. But when Matt says it, probably I will do it. It depends. And the reality is that sometimes you would not be able to address that and you would still have to do what you'll have to do.
Talk a little bit about how you grew your strategic influence, because it sounds like you started out doing 4 demos a day, and that was probably like what the world of solutions consulting looked like. And it also sounds like the organization you were at, and I think this is true of most of the organizations out there, they've also, as you've been going on that journey, realizing that SEs have a place to co-own. So what has that been like for you to kind of grow personally as you're also growing these organizations?
Initially, I did not have any influence at all as a new solutions consultant. So one was I would go and give my demos and come back. And whenever I would highlight challenges, a few things would be taken and few things would not be taken. But as the deal sizes and as the progression happened, what happened was there were certain calls that I had made. When I said calls, there are certain points that I'd highlighted that didn't go in favor of the deal. And people probably thought back and said, hey, this guy already brought that up. It didn't go that way. And once that gets stuck in their mind, they're going to be listening to you. The only thing that I would recommend to all those SEs who are probably at that stage is always speak up. Just because someone is not hearing you, don't stop speaking up, because at some point, people would realize that what you're saying does make sense one way or the other. You might not be right always, but once you get it right once or twice, and if it's critical and it's important, people are going to be listening to you. That is how I was. Probably people did not listen to me, right? Because that's very normal. When you are an early career SE, people have been there more than you in that organization. They've sold more than you. You are new to pre-sales. So your credibility is also something out there. So it all depends. You mature as an individual, your judgment becomes much better. And there are certain points, not only in terms of judgment, but when you help someone out at a critical juncture, even in spite of all those difference in opinions about an opportunity, I think people would also be open to hearing you out, probably just to take in your opinions as well.
I would say also add to that, trust your instincts. So I remember early on in my career, I had a couple of moments where I was like, I feel like, but I'd never spoken up before. Like, I feel like this isn't. Trust your instincts on that. Make sure you're being respectful when you speak up, especially when you're still building your credibility. but you're there in that seat as a SE or SC for a reason. And trust your instincts with it. Speak up. It's better that you say it and someone say, I appreciate you bringing that up, but we're not going to do that, versus after the fact and you go, I knew that 3 months ago. Why didn't you say something?
Exactly.
Right?
Because then they will actually correctly put that back on you and say like, hey, knowing it is good, but then you have to advocate to this organization that we're going down the wrong path.
And I feel like that's correct for whether that's just speaking up in the Slack channel that you have for the actual opportunity, whether it's on those kind of weekly forecast deals so how are we feeling about this deal? And he says, well, it's progressing really well. We have this, this, and this. You're like, well, there's actually an issue that we ran into. It's this, that might delay us a little bit. I mean, find the right time to say it. Maybe it's not there. Maybe it's if you do QBRs as a team, that's a great time to bring in an opinion. Most AEs, I have found this, would love for you to help them present a couple of bits and nuggets with their QBRs, because that way they're not trying to focus so much on the technical bits of the deal. So there's always gaps, and it's a matter of getting back to what we talked about at the beginning of the call, Karthik, that AE relationship that you've built. When you've got that there and there's that trust built, the AE trusting you to speak up and not throw them under a bus, the opportunities if you look for them.
Absolutely, Jack. One thing that I would also mention here is, even though there are places where pre-sales don't have seat in that table, AEs don't go into forecasting without the inputs of SEs or the pre-sales. They would inevitably ask you for the details about the deal, a few technical questions, and so on. As pre-sales, you always have that indirect influence or impact on that forecasting already. It's just a matter of time before you actually have your direct influence on the table.
Yeah, and understanding the unique flow of every kind of forecast, depending on your sales leader and depending on your AE, I think that can be a lot of fun. And you're right, those weird questions are going to come up. So walking into a forecast, you should definitely try and think like, okay, where are the little areas? And then how can I position us as if we're on the front foot here? So even if there's still some gaps open, but you could say like, the AE has already done a great job asking one or two of these questions, and I would love to pick that up further with product or something like that. I found that starting with a bit of positive momentum is always going to help you there.
And also as pre-sales, what we always want is to have a seat at the table. But I still remember my first experience going into a pipeline meeting or into a QBR. I really appreciated sales for being sales that day. The type of questions that they get asked, the grilling that goes into in terms of the revenue made, the progress of the deal, and so on. That's why I said sales will always have that responsibility and will always have to fly under the radar. But yeah, I mean, it's good to be on the table. And whenever you influence, it's always there to help the AEs and work as a team to close those opportunities.
I think it's a great perspective. Before we do end the show, Karthik, if people want to get in touch with you, maybe they live in Chennai and they missed out on that wonderful event that you had recently. How can they get in touch with you? And also any final thoughts that you have that you wanted to share on this topic or any other?
Sure. I am on LinkedIn, as all professionals are. You can't really skip LinkedIn these days, can you? So
you
I'm
really
there on
can't.
LinkedIn.
That's true.
Yeah. I think that's one social media channel that I've not been able to escape. So you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm quite active on LinkedIn. So I will respond to you. I mean, wherever you are, just not in Chennai, I would love to connect. I like talking to a lot of professionals in the pre-sales vocation, getting to know and learn from each other. So just hit me up and we'll get started.
Love it. Well, thanks so much for being on the show, Karthik. We'll look forward to continuing the conversation on LinkedIn because none of us can escape it.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Presales Podcast. These shows are recorded live during our bi-weekly LinkedIn show called Presales Live and include a listener Q&A after each recording. To find information on the live show, head to presalescollective.com/podcast, follow the Presales Collective page on LinkedIn, or join the Presales Collective Slack. We have a dedicated channel for the Presales Podcast where you can find more information and join in the conversation after the show. We'll see you next time.